Good evening, everybody. This is Casper from the Tropical Weather Threat Society bringing you our nightly update regarding the tropics. And I, thankfully, have some very, very rare and uncommon news to report, and that is for the Atlantic Basin. No tropical cyclone activity expected for the next 7 days. So for September 7th and this to be the graphic, it's absolutely amazing and very, very thankful that we're not looking at anything at all, approaching climatological peak of the season. If we look at the models, this goes out 10 days. This is our legacy euro. As you could see, push it out 4, nothing, 5, nothing. We get to 7. Maybe the wave that comes off of Africa, but as we've seen for a lot this season, that even if a wave comes off and has this large signal, does it materialize is a completely different question. And a lot of them have not materialized. I mean, we've only had a couple storms actually form out here into the portions of the main development region and getting into the southwestern Atlantic. So, great news to report. Now, if we look at the AI model for the euro, it's a little bit of a different story. They are certainly calling for a decent amount of signal out here for development in the Atlantic, but again, we need to wait for this wave to emerge off of the coast, and then this thing could just completely fall apart. Let's just kind of wait and see as we progress through the days, because at day 7, maybe, but not a lot. We'll see. Again, it's going to be way out there into the tropical Atlantic regardless, so it's not like we wouldn't have a considerable amount of time to watch it. Now, if we compare it all with the GEFS, there's some signal that we could get something that tries to pull up. This is through 10 days. Maybe something tries to develop out here in the main development region. But even if it does, as you could see, there is hardly anything that gets remotely close to populated land masses, other than maybe some shower and thunderstorm activity for the folks here in the Cabo Verde Islands. But otherwise than that, not much. One thing that I do want to point out is that, folks, you are probably going to see the scary little runs of the GFS operational. Now, what we're looking at here is the the GEFS ensembles of the American model. So I'm going to kind of skip around here before I jump to the Google DeepMind for verification. But out here at 10 days and beyond, we're getting a signal of a Central American gyre. And then if I run this forward, folks are going to be sharing this online. All right, now as you can see, the euro doesn't even go out that far, because out past 10 days have literally no skill whatsoever. It's what we like to call fantasy land. You grab a hold of Alice's hand and y'all just go walk, or you meet up with Dorothy and you just take a walk through Oz or something, because what you're looking at is not real. It's guaranteed to change over and over again, time after time, run after run. So folks will be sharing this online. And the reason that I am stating this, and we'll come back to our seeds in just a second. The reason that I'm stating this is that with the GEFS and the American ensembles, there's one thing that I would like to show folks, and this is the deep layer shear ensemble mean. And what this is showing is a great amount of shear that is coming across the Gulf of Mexico and potentially getting down into portions of the Caribbean. So what we're looking at with the development that would basically be somewhere in here. Look at the amount of shear that is being forecast by the same model through the ensembles. Now, if we look at the control, it's even worse. So, eh, don't get caught up in the deterministic runs. Especially, we're starting to get into that season to where CAG is most likely going to develop it at least some point in time. And the GEFS model and its operational will have a convective feedback bias and just over amplify storms that are in this particular portion of the basin. That will show what we call quote unquote ghost storms way late, well past 240 hours. You'll see them sometimes, they'll be like, we'll say like 352. And then the next thing you know, the next run, and it'll look like something is there. But then when it gets to about 264 or 252, boop, back to 300 and whatever hours again. And it never materializes, folks. That's why if you see folks sharing the deterministic models, especially of the GFS, they get caught with it in the early part of the season and they always get caught with it at the latter part of the season because honestly, those folks have no idea what they're talking about. And they just look at the models and like, oh, it's scary. We're going to get folks' attention. And it works for them. But we don't we don't get down with that around here at all. So now we're gonna run the deep Google DeepMind, and as you can see, we do have a little bit of a signal. There is 50 members of the DeepMind, so there's two waves. The first one coming off here, and then the second one there. So and now we're out 10 days. So what we're gonna do is we are going to just take an entire slice here, and as you could see, everything we're starting to get into that fall type pattern to where the fronts that are coming through and are eroding the high pressure out here into the Atlantic, and the overall trade winds are not that strong. So the storms aren't moving. Even if it were to develop, the storm isn't really going to move that quickly to the west across the tropical Atlantic. And I understand that we're into the peak part of the season, but it's not going to be much longer before we're not really going to have to worry about the Cabo Verde systems. I mean, we obviously want to be concerned for the folks out here, but for U.S. interests, I'm not too sure about that, folks. That this portion of the season, as far as the United States, I mean, it's a little early, but by the time we get to September 17th, I mean, like it's not much longer. It's really not. That persistent East Coast troughing is pretty well protected the United States this year, and it has been a very, very welcomed member of the 2025 season. I'm glad it has stuck around. Now, if we transition over, because we really don't have much to talk about the Atlantic Basin, but while we've got the deep mind up, got another little area out here that could behave similar to what we've seen with Lorena, but there's a little bit more of a southerly track to this, at least right now. That's not coming out, and then like if it follows the mean, we're fine. But I'm noticing that even on some of the ensembles, we may have a little something occurring again, like what we had similar with Lorena, just as far as potential track and stuff like that. And then, of course, we will get to Kiko here in just a moment. Beautiful storm. Has been absolutely amazing to watch. Glad it's out there, not bothering anybody into the open waters, and it has just been a beautiful specimen. annular structure. I could go on and on. So now what we have here is the Euro on the left and the GFS on the right. This is our 850 millibar vorticity. This is approximately 1 mile above the ocean surface. Now, as we will note right here from the very, very beginning, we have a small area of low pressure off of the west coast of Florida. It is not tropical, folks. It really doesn't have a lot of winds to it at all either. I'll show you that on Earthnall here in just a moment. But now as we continue to run this forward, we're going to take this out 48 hours, 72, 96, 120. Yeah, there's a little spot out here into the main development region, but not really concerned with that in the slightest. And then we get to 168, 216, 240. Now, by this time, if we come back to about 168, the GFS is starting to develop a Central American gyre. You're getting winds coming from the Eastern Pacific, crossing over Central America, like this. And then you're getting the winds to go like this. And then you're getting the winds to come around like this. And then they reestablish coming back like that. This creates an area of low pressure at this point. As we start to go through this large, broad gyre, it's just a very large area of low pressure. And sometimes, if it could slip off and get out over the open waters, it can develop tropical cyclones. And some of our most famous and impactful systems for the state of Florida have come from Central American gyres. But, and I've tried to go through this thing with a fine-tooth comb. The Euro is not really agreeing with it at all. We still have winds this way. Kind of the winds are light and variable down here, like this. You've got the trough that is associated here, and we just don't have. We've got the same trough here, but we just don't have the same setup that what we are seeing with the GFS. The Euro is not in agreement. Now, because of the way that the GFS operational and deterministic behaves, especially in the Western Caribbean, we have to take it with a grain of salt. And we really, really need corroboration with that. Now, again, as we run this out, by the time we get to day 10, they are two totally different solutions. You've got the winds coming out like this and some of the winds coming up like this. Period. There is no rotation, there is no circulation, there is no gyre. The GFS, on the other hand, has a low right here, and it is very, very defined at that point. And then we've already seen to where it comes out, develops, and then heads this way. But again, that's fantasy land stuff, because we're already well past, where we could really, really depend upon, once we get to 168 and 7 days, that's about to the extent of it. We do go out to 240 because you can get some skill out of large scale features if you have congruence between the models. This time we don't. And knowing the inherent biases of the GFS at this time of the year, take it with a grain of salt, folks. If you see folks pushing out 264, anything like that, hang it up. In all opinions, my personal opinion, even if I see anything like that, I would never follow anything like that. Even though I follow, a few folks, but they keep it real. So what we have here is our humidity levels for the Atlantic. We have the Euro on the left and the GFS on the right. We have our 500 millibar level on the top and our 700 millibar level on the bottom. Dry air has been pretty much king all season long. King, queen, the rest of the court, all the bishops, the rooks, whatever you want if we're playing chess out here. And as you can see, we can run this along. The dry air pretty much remains. I mean, we obviously know that the GFS develops the Central American gyre. Look at the amount of dry air that is associated and lack of moisture associated with on the Euro. If we run this out even further and get it to day 10, we've got a huge patch of dry air over the Western Caribbean at the 500 millibar level and a not very moist environment at the 700 millibar level. As we can try to compare that with the other two, there is a deep atmospheric river of tropical moisture being strung all the way up to Canada with the potential of a developing gyre on off the coast of the Yucatan. So, I mean, big differences between the models tonight, folks. And without anything out there, meh, okay. So if we take a look at our wind shear, this is going to tell us a big story. This has winds changing with height between the 200 and 850 millibar level, which is approximately 5,000 to 40,000 feet above the ocean surface. So as we can see, the Euro brings a big time amount of shear into the Gulf of Mexico. The GFS also brings a big time amount of shear into the Gulf of Mexico at day 7. Now, by the time we get to day 10, we do note that the GFS did try to develop the gyre, but look at the shear that is associated with this. Now, the GFS, one thing that we can see here, and I'll take it out to day 8 because it's really shows a difference. So, one thing that we can tell is that the Euro brings this wind in like this. Now, if you remember when we were looking at the GEFS ensemble mean of the shear, this is exactly what we saw. The GFS, on the other hand, has more of a linear flow and then wants to take it off associated with the trough and leaving an area of lower shear in this region instead of what we see with the Euro that is getting, I mean, if this sets up, you're not getting anything to develop out here. With the dry air and then a shear component going the opposite direction of the way that the lower levels are moving, you can forget it. You can forget it. Nothing will develop out there if the Euro verifies, and I'm serious with that. Even though we would have it, if the only thing that would be able to develop down there would have to be real low, and the moment that it pulls northward, both models are in agreement, at least, and this is where you can kind of say, all right, this may be true because both models are in agreement with this belt of shear here at about 20-25 degrees north. So if anything were to develop and on the weakness of the high try to pull northward, it's going to run into these belts. So again, folks, I'm literally scratching the bottom of the barrel trying to find stuff to talk about for the Atlantic Basin, but there's not really much of a signal. Looking for the MJO, as you can see with the 2-week forecast. I'll even pull up the ensembles. They're pretty much all over the place, but it does look like it could collapse and then try to rebound back towards our hemisphere in a short period of time. So, we'll have to wait and see. Now, like I had mentioned on Earth Null, yes, there is some type of little surface feature right here off the west coast. But if we come up, we're 1 mile above the ocean surface. You don't have very strong winds at all. This is non tropical in nature. If we pull it up to the 700 millibar level, it is gone. So, 2 miles above the ocean surface, there is no circulation. The 500 millibar level and the 700 millibar level have completely different wind directions. And if that wasn't bad enough, the 250 millibar level, up about 6 miles above the ocean surface, has a very strong wind shear vector. So, yes, there is a circulation out there, and it is showing up very weak on some of the ensembles as this little cluster of gray lines. But all in all, don't worry about it. It's literally nothing. Now, this right here, there's something that I just want to be like, okay, we'll see. Um, Things are just weird this year, folks. I've been asking around and having discussion with a lot of folks as to exactly what has been really going on. I've got some hypotheses and stuff like that. And it's been interesting discussion. I mean, we're kind of watching it in real time. I'm waiting on the postseason analytics. Now, if we take a look at the Eastern Pacific, as you can remember, yesterday we had something to talk about in the EPAC. Not today. Our O20 is now no 20. It's just oh no and gone. So literally the only thing we have is Hurricane Kiko. Now, this is still a beautiful specimen. It is starting to cloud over. It is finally starting to weaken some and trying to succumb to some of the cooler water temperatures that are out there. But even the National Hurricane Center now in the discussion notes that this thing might make it through and might make it through that little shear component that was supposed to kill it. Annular tropical cyclones are some resilient little things. They're very uncommon, but boy, when they happen, they're very resilient. They're very robust and kind of like a hardy storm, and it takes a lot to weaken it. And currently, we're at 18.1 north, 145.5 west, about 635 miles east of Hilo, Hawaii, and about 835 miles east southeast of Honolulu. This right here is critical because now it is east of Hilo. So we're pretty, latitude wise even with the Big Island. Maximum sustained winds are 110 miles an hour, and we're currently moving west northwest at 13 with a minimum central pressure of 974 millibars. There are no coastal watches or warnings in effect, but the Hawaiian Islands should continue to monitor the progress of Kiko. Right now, in our hazards affecting land, the surf. I am sure that the surfers are really, really appreciating that, but folks, please stay out of the water unless you are basically a professional surfer. Otherwise than that, you really ain't going to have no business being out there on the waters. As we can see with the forecast cone, none of the islands are located in the forecast cone, but what do we see here tonight? Hurricane, hurricane, storm, 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 storm. It's forecast to potentially survive this upper level low, an increase in deep layer wind shear, and the reduction in mid-level humidity. And I will show you that here in a moment. And it's hey, I thought it might. Annular tropical cyclones, like I said, they're very resilient. So we've got paragraphs 2 and 3 with the discussion here this evening that I am going to go through because there are pertinent information in both. The west-northwestward motion of 300 degrees at 11 knots continues, and a slightly faster speed on that trajectory is expected at least through day 4, while Kiko remains on the southwestern periphery of a mid-level ridge. Based on this motion, Kiko is expected to pass to the north of the Hawaiian Islands on Tuesday and Wednesday, and the most reliable track models remain in good agreement on this scenario. The track guidance is again a little faster with Kiko as it passes to the north of the islands, and the NHC track forecast is a bit faster than the previous prediction, starting in about 24 hours. But there is no appreciable change in the cross-track direction. Based on the new forecast and accounting for typical forecast errors, there is currently less than a 10% chance of tropical storm force winds occurring at any location on the Hawaiian Islands, and tropical storm watches are not required. Cool water temperatures appear to be contributing to Kiko's current weakening. Moderate southwesterly vertical shear is forecast to develop over Kiko in about 12 to 18 hours, and that, along with a very dry surrounding environment, should lead to even quicker weakening. The new NHC intensity forecast closely follows the HCCA consensus aids and shows Kiko falling below hurricane intensity on Monday. The shear appears to peak in about 48 hours, as much as 30 to 35 knots. So, if Kiko can't survive that period, it's possible that the storm may weaken more slowly in the latter part of the forecast, especially with sea surface temperatures along its path expected to warm to about 27 degrees Celsius by day 3. So as we could see, they're still calling for the weakening of this to maybe not be as quick as what was recently thought. Now, if we look here, we have our deep layer wind shear that is currently, what we were dealing with, and now we don't have much, but now we're starting to get that increase. All right, we're in this area here. So we're expecting the increase. We are also, though, expecting the potential for some sea surface temperature increase. And then the mid-level relative humidity increases. But as you can see, the intensity continues to come down. What it looks like is that we're dealing with this upper level low to where we get this great amount of wind shear. It is transitioning through and around where the upper level low is, and then we get it back again, or with an approaching trough. Honestly, once it's past Hawaii, I haven't even bothered to look at it. I've been only focused here on our friends out here for the Hawaiian Islands. That's it. That's all I've looked at. So what occurs afterwards is kind of irrelevant in my opinion. There's not really much out there once we get past Hawaii. Okay, but as you can see, way out into the open waters around Hawaii, they do have a hurricane warning issued from the National Weather Service. So I don't understand why, but yeah, we're just gonna go with it. That's what they've done. That's what we're doing. So a hurricane warning for the coastal waters outside of, I guess, the the international waters or so. But yeah, hurricane warning. Weird. Looking at our ensembles, we do have this area showing up over here into the Eastern Pacific. I would give it I wouldn't be surprised within maybe about the next 48 hours or less. We see at least an O20 spot out here. into parts of the East Pacific on the outlook. If we take a look and go out on the Euro AI, something very similar, maybe a little bit further to the west, and that would certainly be acceptable. We remember the Google DeepMind does have something out here as well, and potentially impacting the Baja. If we look at the GEFS is saying, hey, wait a minute, there might be something and it could potentially ramp up and get itself kind of strong. But then again, we're going to have to wait and see. That's still, folks, 240 hours out. Not necessarily over reliable. And as you can see, when we get to day 7, we're just then starting to get for potential development. All right, jumping out into the Western Pacific, we have Tropical Storm Tapa, and that is currently on approach to southern China and an area of invest out here into the southern Indian Ocean. And as we could see with our tropical storm, it is currently just under hurricane status. At 60 knots, this would be a 70-mile-an-hour strong tropical storm at this advisory, currently moving in west of Hong Kong and will weaken over land and bring a ton of rain, as noted here on the satellite picture right here. All that moisture is going to go splat right there. So, weird season. Very, very weird season. What if I were to tell you that the Western Pacific Basin has yet to see a tropical cyclone with major hurricane intensities at all? Nothing. It's a weird season. We're going to figure it out, though. So, all right, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and shut it down tonight. There's not really much to talk about. So, I've tried. I've kind of rambled on as long as possible here. And, again, there's not much. We'll see if there's something to talk about tomorrow night. Maybe we'll get an outlook in the EPAC. Maybe, we'll see what's up with Kiko. I'm not really expecting much for the Atlantic Basin, but who knows? We'll see. Until then, we'll be live. Have a great night, everybody. We'll be live again tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central, here on Facebook and YouTube. So have a wonderful night, everybody.